Want to welcome committee, staff, everybody in the gallery. It's going to be a good day, so we'll get started. First, request for bill introductions. Seeing none, we'll move right into our budget hearings. Okay, Luke, would you give us an overview, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I am Luke Drury, a senior fiscal analyst with legislative research. I will be presenting the Water Office and the Department of Environment budgets for you today. However, I do want to note there are a couple things that are a little bit new now that we are into some of these water agencies that you all have included. I want to speak through those documents quickly first. The first item is a legal or ledger-sized blue sheet. This is the State Water Plan Fund table as recommended by the Special Committee on State Budget. The front page, the front side of this shows actual expenditures along with recommended lines of appropriation by agency, by line. If you flip over to the back side, it shows estimated revenues along with fees, general fund transfers, and other transfers. Estimated ending balances is there as well. Something that is a little bit different or new that you all may not be familiar with is with the amount of recommendations that came from the Special Committee on State Budget regarding the lapses of reappropriations and the lapses of enhancements, I have included a section that has SCSB actions. That takes each individual agency. It shows the individual lines of appropriation that were lapsed or recommended to be lapsed and where those enhancement requests would have resided in the agency's budgets, but those have been deleted from the Special Committee's recommendations. That's the first sheet, the blue sheet, the Special Committee's recommendations. The second tall sheet is a yellow sheet. Yellow is going to delineate governor. So this is the same table, State Water Plan Fund table, however, adapted for the governor's recommendations. Same applies. Lines of appropriation, expenditures, along with revenues. If you go to the back side, you will see where the governor differs from the state Special Committee on State Budget. She did not recommend any lapses to State Water Plan Fund reappropriations. However, you do see many lines, almost every line of appropriation to be a bit lower. Those are decreases, and that is part of her recommended statewide State Water Plan Fund operating adjustment. I then want to note for you the yellow 8x12 sheet, regular paper sheet. This is the same as what I handed out at the beginning here that is shorthand. That showed the governor's, that sheet showed the Special Committee's recommendations as it relates to the agency request. This yellow sheet will show the governor's recommendations as it relates to the Special Committee's recommendations. So you can see where the governor differs from the Special Committee. Madam Chair, I could answer questions on those documents, or I can go ahead and begin with the presentation of the Kansas Water Office's budget.
Thanks, Luke. So give us an example of, let's just use the Water Office on this 8x12 sheet. Where's the SBC lines and where are the governor's lines?
So on page 2, thank you, Madam Chair. On page 2 at the bottom, you will see Kansas Water Office FY 2026. You see SWPF reappropriation that says item not included in the SBC recommendation. You see that add $7.9 million in reappropriations. That is because the Special Committee recommended those to be deleted. The governor is recommending that those be added. So that's how you can read this sheet.
Okay, thank you. That enlightens me a bunch. Okay, any questions, any other questions about any of these water sheets? Representative Rogers.
Thank you. Madam Chair. So again, Luke, if it's in parentheses, it's cut for both either committee or the governor, right? And if it's not, like normal. We're not, no game. I just want to make sure as we go through this to understand that if it typically, like in typical accounting, if it's in parentheses, it's a cut or reduction. Well, there's no minus, that's what I thought. I just want to make sure because we've had so many different colors and formulas thrown at us this year. I just want to make sure, so thank you.
Madam Chair, Representative, that is correct. If it's in parentheses, that delineates a reduction or a cut. If it is not in parentheses, that is an add, or that is the whole number.
Okay, so for example, Water Office took the 7.9 million out. The governor put it back, so it's a positive 7.9, and in 2027, the operating adjustment of 654,000 was cut by the Special Budget Committee and also cut by the governor.
Madam Chair, that would, that State Water Plan Fund operating reduction was only the recommendation of the governor. That is showing a deletion of 654 by the operating adjustment. The other items are listed as enhancements. So for example, the enhancement item above there, FY 2027 State Water Plan Fund enhancement request, the governor recommended to add 1.1 million for that particular item, and that shows as an add because the special committee deleted it. The State Water Plan Fund operating adjustment shows as a deletion here because the special committee did not recommend a deletion of base appropriations.
So the special committee didn't, and she didn't either.
Well, this is all funds, so I'm not sure. The question isn't, that's not the governor, it's the kind of money it comes from, I think.
Madam Chair, if I may
ahead.
help to explain, you can think about these as two different discrete items, one of those being an enhancement and one of those being base operations. The enhancement request was cut by the Special Committee on State Budget. The governor does recommend an enhancement. The Special Committee on State Budget did not recommend a cut to base operations. The governor does recommend a cut to base operations.
All right. Please go ahead with their budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would note that Connie Owen is in the audience with us here today. After I present the agency's budget, she may be able to answer any questions that you or the committee may have. I know that we have a full agenda here with these two budgets, so I'll begin right in. Page number 1, I will note for the committee is the executive summary, brief overview of what the Water Office does. I would also note for the committee in expenditures by fiscal year, that table, the committee will note a increase from FY 2024 into FY 2025 and beyond. I would note that that is the direct result of enactment of Senate Sub for House Bill 2302 and additional State Water Plan Fund monies that were appropriated to the Water Office, later expended by the Water Office. Also, 2 new grant funds administered by the Water Office, the Water Technical Assistance Fund and the Water Projects Grants Fund. So that is why you see those increases. Those dollars were appropriated and then later spent by the agency. Flipping over onto page number 2 is the budget and policy snapshot. I do note here that roughly $7.9 million of State Water Plan Fund was reappropriated from 25 to 26. There are one-time adjustments in 27, and the agency did submit an enhancement request. And Madam Chair, members of the committee, I will discuss these in greater detail as we get to those budget sections. If you flip over to page 3, you will see a 10-year expenditure history. You do see what looks like an arrow there in FY 2022 with an SGF number of $78 million of SGF spend, much higher than in relative other fiscal years. I would note for the committee that is the direct result of the debt payoff for Big Hill, Clinton, and Hillsdale reservoirs that was recommended and spent in FY 2022. You do see that decrease back down and then start to trend back up again as explained by additional expenditures being appropriated or additional monies from the State Water Plan Fund being appropriated to the Water Office and those expenditures beginning to go out the door. Flipping over onto the next page is the graph of expenditures. You do see, again, that big hill there for capital budget. That does relate to the debt payoff. Flipping over to the next page, page 5. I do apologize for the formatting with the table. Page 5 does have the expenditures by category over the last several fiscal years. I will note for the committee an item for you all. If you look at FY 2025, that may catch your attention. You do see other assistance expenditures totaling $42.4 million. Again, that is directly related to the projects and grants fund of the Kansas Water Office being expended in FY 2025. Flipping over onto page 6. This is our more detailed table that shows expenditures by classification. I would note for the committee that other contractual services, you do see that makes up roughly 50% of the agency's total requests in 2026. That is, again, and I do apologize for being redundant, Madam Chair and members of the committee, but that is mostly related to State Water Plan Fund projects. In addition to that, you will also see that Corps of Engineer contracts as it relates to contracts at the federal reservoirs also occur in this expenditure category. Flipping to the next page, page 7, some more details on state aid, other assistance, and program details. Again, I will note that other assistance number that will jump off the page to you in FY 2025 of $42.4 million. Again, technical assistance and projects grants funds. The next page is page 8. You will note that the Water Office does receive some general fund, water plan fund, fee funds, and federal funds, and all other funds. I would note for the committee that state general fund expenditures directly relates mostly to salaries and wages for the agency's staff. On page number 9 is the beginning of the FY 2026 analysis. The committee will be familiar with this table. The table above is enumerated, and those numbers then correspond with the narrative explanations down below. We begin with item number 1, which is that approved budget. That's a total of $45.2 million, including 1.4 general fund and 12.4 state water plan fund. Item number 2 is state water plan fund reappropriations. The agency did reappropriate some monies, as discussed earlier. I do identify where those items of reappropriation occurred and what those funding and monies are used for. Flipping over onto page 10 is the rest of that list. I would then note for the committee that this bulleted list will correspond with your blue sheet on the back side of it that shows those lapses. I do apologize, there is a bullet that I failed to include on this list, and that is for the agency did reappropriate monies in the HB 2302 projects line to the tune of $1.2 million. I would note that those monies are used as operating expenditures as it relates to administering the grant program funds, the technical assistance grant and the project grant. So expenditures from those grant funds go out in the form of assistance. This line of appropriation for HB 2302 projects is used to help operate that program. Item number 3 is the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant. The agency's budget does include an additional new $500,000 a grant, federal grant. And these awards are intended to go towards restoring playas and grass buffers. I would note for the committee as well, I was able to find some more information specifically on this project. The agency will collaborate with Playa Lake Joint Venture to assist with what the project is called Tomorrow's Water, Connecting People, Playas, and the Ogallala Aquifer. There is a link here in the digital version for members to be able to click on and see some more details on that project. Item number 4 is all other adjustments. Again, I call these the rats and cats. That's a total of about $1,700 from agency fee funds. Those are just some typical adjustments that the agency is estimating across a couple of different funds within the agency. Madam Chair, I can certainly stand for questions or I can move forward into FY 2027.
Thank you, Luke. Questions of the committee about 2026? Ranking Carlin.
Thank you, Luke, and thank you, Madam Chair. I wish you'd go a little faster, Luke. You're really going slow.
On the blue sheet, you said something about $1.2 million from Kansas Water Office. I can't find that. I don't know what you said.
Madam Chair, Representative, I apologize. That is for House Bill 2302 projects.
Where do I
That
see
is
it?
the
I can't-
second,
Oh, okay.
second to last line
On the Water Office.
on the Water Office on the
Okay,
back
I see.
page.
Okay, I found it.
I failed to, in my summary, include a bullet for that line and the, with the number and also with an explanation of the funding. And so I do want to take this opportunity to point that out to the committee, that there were reappropriations that occurred in that line and that they are for operating expenditures for those grant programs administered by the Water Office.
Thank you for that. But does that add up to 1.2 million if I go across? I would not have gone across to add that up to 1.2. I'd be looking for, oh, is it? I still don't know where that 1.2 is.
Madam Chair, Representative, I can certainly will, because there are a lot of information. There is a lot of moving parts with all of these water items. I'd be more than happy to sit down with you and go through these lines to be able to
I want to know where
discreetly.
you come up with 1.2 million. Tell me how, where do I look to see that figure? David, you can help. That'd be great. I know I'm in the right, oh, I'm on the wrong side? Oh, for crying out loud. Okay, I was on the other side. I can round up, but I just couldn't find it. I was on the wrong side. Thank you. Thank you, David. Bye.
We may ask for clarification on that when we work the bill. Any other questions for 2026? Go ahead to 2027, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2027 begins on page 11. Again, the table has those listed items that are adjusted along with numbers corresponding with them that do track with the rest of the summary. Item number 1 are one-time adjustments. The assessment and evaluation line of the State Water Plan Fund was reduced by roughly $268,000. The 2025 legislature had added that amount for an airborne electromagnetic survey of the Ogallala Aquifer in partnership with the Kansas Geological Survey. That was considered to be one time and does not reoccur in FY 2027. Item number 2 is $500,000 for the water planning project development line. Monies were appropriated in that amount of $500,000 by the legislature of 2025. Those expenditures were considered to be one-time and do not reoccur in 2027. The next bullet on page 12, up at the top line, there were $90,000 that were appropriated by the 25 legislature to independent program evaluation that were considered to be, in addition to base expenditures and considered to be one-time. Those were deleted for 2027. The John Redmond Reservoir Hydrosuction Pilot Program, the 2025 legislature put in $1.5 million for that project. In 2026, those were considered to be one-time expenditures and do not reoccur in 2027. Item number 2 are the agency enhancement requests. I say requests despite it being one item because really it is 2 enhancement requests in one. In total, the agency is requesting $3.8 million state water plan fund. That includes $2.3 million for water planning project development and $1.5 million for reservoir sediment management initiatives. The water planning project development line of appropriation is new. That was created last year by the legislature. That funding is intended to help create long-term regional water planning, to optimize management for water resources, identify potential vulnerabilities, evaluate funding needs, and targeted funding for maximum benefit. The proposed regional water planning effort as a part of that line includes compiling existing information, such as available reservoir storage and current sedimentation rates, with the goal of being able to model and examine impacts of different parameters to help identify the benefits of future proposed projects. The second part of the agency's enhancement request includes a new line of appropriation with $1.5 million requested for reservoir sediment management initiatives. Essentially, this line would help to create some flexibility for the agency. I would remind the committee that the legislature has in the past appropriated monies for reservoir sediment initiatives. As John Redmond, we just talked about, Tuttle Creek is another example. Those were individual discrete lines in the appropriations bill. Moving forward, the agency requests that a new line be created as more of a catch-all for reservoir sediment management initiatives, with funding going towards that moving forward. Item number 3 we start to get into the items that are not agency enhancement requests. FY 2027 health insurance rate changes. Madam Chair and members of the committee, this is not the first time you've heard me explain this. This is here for the water office as well. Employer contributions to group health rates are estimated to increase. The agency's budget reflects those increases. Flipping over onto page 13, Capers rate change. Same situation here. The Capers Trust Fund had a good year last year. As a result of that, those employer contributions for Capers are estimated to go down. Madam Chair and members of the committee, I do want to note that items 5 through 9 do seem maybe a little bit confusing or can be confusing. I'm going to try to explain it as best I can. Essentially, items 5 through 9 are explaining some estimated expenditure changes within the State Water Plan Fund for the agency. The agency is adding $514,000. These are still net zero changes. I will note that, net zero changes. $514,890 State Water Plan Fund for MOU storage. They are increasing that line by reducing it in other areas. The same holds true for water planning project development, an increase of $230,000. Again, an increase here with reductions to others. Stream gauging, an increase of $100,000 State Water Plan Fund. The Arbuckle study is where the first deletion begins. That's a deletion of $230,000 for $70,000 for the Arbuckle study. The agency notes that the Arbuckle study is entering a new phase of study, necessitating less expenditures. So therefore, the agency requests less spending there and then to reallocate those dollars to other areas of import as identified by the agency. Item number 9 is the same situation, deleting $614,000 from the Water Plan Fund for water quality partnerships. That is more related to expenditures from Milford Lake Regional Conservation Partnership Program. The matching requirements for that were met in FY 2027. As a result, the agency's request does take some of those monies that would have went towards that matching requirement and instead reapportions them to other lines of appropriation within the State Water Office's budget. Flipping over to the next page, page 14, item 10, that National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant. Again, that's new monies. The agency is requesting an additional, or is estimating an additional monies of $1.5 million coming in for this project in 2027 and expending it. Item number 11 is the Water Marketing Fund. That's an increase of $1.1 million. The agency notes that expenditures as it relates to contracts for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for operation and maintenance at Kansas reservoirs are increasing. As a result of that, the agency is estimating increased expenditures from the Water Marketing Fund for this purpose in 27. Item number 12 and item number 13 are somewhat related. The agency's request includes a decrease of $500,000 for the Water Projects Grant Fund. I would note that the legislature last year added $500,000 to the transfers from the State Water Plan Fund to the Water Projects Grant Fund. The agency's request would bring that number back down to $12 million, so essentially treating that enhancement or that increased transfer as one time. The agency requests to go back to original language that would have been found in Senate Sub for House Bill 2302. The same holds true for item 13. That's a request. The request includes $500,000 reduction. That is because the legislature last year added $500,000 to this transfer. The agency's request reduces that back down to what was originally $5 million. Flipping over to the final page, page 15, all other adjustments, a decrease of roughly $433,000. That mostly relates to a federal fund for the rehabilitation of dams classified as high hazard potential. The agency was awarded these monies. These are more one-time in nature. Therefore, the agency is estimating for those to be spent in FY 2020, the most of those monies to be spent in 2026, with the remaining balance to be spent in FY 2027 and not continuing forward. Madam Chair, I can certainly stand for questions that the committee may have, or as I indicated, Connie Owen with the Water Office is here with us today, and she may be able to answer any questions that you or the committee may have.
Thank you, Luke. Questions for Luke about 27? Representative Rogers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Luke. Lots of stuff here. So again, I guess, give us the nutshell. Is there a reduction? It sounds to me like there's a lot of moving around of monies to try to, and which is the best. I mean, if every agency did it kind of like this to go where the need is and be able to do that. So I just want to make sure, because I'm, again, looking at the numbers, looking at all this, not your fault, it's hard to follow. So talk, just bare bones. What's the total, is there a total enhancement asking from, I'm not worried about the governor's recommendation, from the agency's recommendation? Because again, as you were explaining, it looks like it's more of just kind of moving to the appropriate areas, doesn't need it. So do we have somewhere, you know, kind of where the bottom line enhancement of dollar is? Yes.
Madam Chair, Representative, to answer the question, that's a very good question. You are right. There are a lot of moving parts to this water, and it's not just the Water Office. It's 5 different agencies, and it can be very difficult to track. I would note that those enhancement dollars are listed in item number 2 on page 11. That number is $3.8 million, 3,770,000. That is the agency's requested enhancement. Those other items that you did note, Representative, as moving around, those are identified down in items 5 through 9. And those are net zero changes. Again, as you indicated, changing priorities as conditions change, expenditures are changing there. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, Madam Chair. Okay, so again, as we're just looking at enhancements from the budget, yet the last 26 budget, 27, we're looking at a 3.8%, a 3.8 million enhancement based on, I may ask Director Owen to come. This is dealing with fully funding Redmond, is that right? Or other projects, or Matt, is that? Okay. We didn't do that. We only funded for 1 year? Okay. Good. Okay. Makes sense. I couldn't remember what we did. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Could you please go through that again? Mr. Unruh, do you want to come up and talk about the John Redmond in particular? Thank you. State your name for the committee.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Matt Unruh, Assistant Director of the Kansas Water Office. Appreciate being here today. And to your question, Representative Rogers, yes, you are right as far as the Redmond hydrosuction funding specifically. The FY 26 funding for that was basically year 1 of 2 years worth of funding. So the enhancement request that you see for FY 27 in a reservoir sediment management initiatives funding line would provide that second year of total $3 million state water plant fund support for Redmond hydrosuction.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Any other questions about the Kansas Water Office budget? We have 2 speakers that might want to summarize things. Connie Owen, the Director of the Kansas Water Office, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Committee, it's good to see you again after yesterday. And I'm going to give you a couple of quick highlights. I know we're trying to be mindful of our time. And then Victoria Asbury of our office, who's our Policy and Governmental Affairs lead, will come to more specifically answer questions and address the budget. But I do want to draw attention to enhancements, reappropriations, and because we know it's a very tight year, everyone's being asked, what could you possibly live without? So we have some of those identified as well. So I'll walk through those real quickly for you. As was mentioned, the two enhancements that we are requesting are the water planning and project development. That's the latest in an iteration from the water plan. I was here yesterday sharing with you the development of the water plan. Then a year ago, there was over the last couple of years, there was a major outreach effort with a lot of local meetings to develop the strategic implementation framework to try and help actually implement the water plan. This is the next iteration of that, where we would be diving in very deep with modeling and data assessment and gap analysis and cost estimates to take basin by basin to really do in-depth water planning and identify project development. So we would be starting with 2 basins and hopefully move that into statewide over a period of years. The other enhancement, as was just mentioned, is the reservoir sediment management initiatives. The reason that has a different name other than John Redmond hydrosuction, it does include the second year for John Redmond, but it also provides the flexibility for other sediment management initiatives. For example, we have, for a couple of years, we've had a real interest with both of the Corps of Engineers offices, Kansas City and Tulsa, that manage Kansas reservoirs, and the surrounding states to get together and have a combined brain trust on how are we going to deal with sediment management and bring all those resources to bear to try and plan out what other tools we can develop. And the Corps of Engineers, as always, doesn't move very quickly, and so they're working through their channels to try to get funding. We would need to cost share that effort, and if we have money in hand, they're more likely to come forward with it. So those are the 2 enhancements that we've identified. As for reappropriations, we are requesting that, 6 different items be reappropriated. And the one that is an absolute have to do it, no questions asked, we don't have any discretion, is the operation and maintenance cost contracts that we have with the Corps of Engineers. For the Corps of Engineers reservoirs that we have contracts with, we have the obligation to help pay for operation and maintenance. The Corps bills us. We have to pay. One reason that that's a reappropriation is because the Corps does not operate on the same schedule we do, and their invoices often will come in at a time that is not compatible with state budgeting, so that's why there can be money carried over from year to year. But we cannot escape the obligation, and we can't always predict exactly what their bill is going to be. So the next reappropriation that we would request to be restored is conservation assistance for water users. And primarily that's a contract we have with the Kansas Rural Water Association, and they provide technical assistance to public water suppliers to create conservation plans. They work with local communities. They come out, they assess, do you have a leak? Do you have a problem? Where, do you have efficiencies that you can improve? So this is a really helpful hands-on technical service that they provide that these small communities really benefit from and could not do on their own. That's also derived from a statutory charge that the Water Office has to provide that service in some measure. We'd also request reappropriation for assessment and evaluation. That is a series of contracts, studies, efforts, projects that we have primarily with the Corps of Engineers and the United States Geological Survey. The majority of that funding is obligated, but as I said, the federal entities don't bill us at the same schedule that we have. So we need to be meeting those obligations. Yes, Madam Chair.
Where are you listing these on the budget pages or?
Page 14 is the water assistance.
These are lines in the state water plan fund that the reappropriations were
Okay,
eliminated.
okay. I was looking for it in the budget
I see.
request, but it's in here.
We need to know what you're looking.
Yep. Okay, so just state the first two and then I'll be with you.
Okay, I'm sorry for the confusion. Thank you, Luke. The first one I described was the MOU storage, operations and maintenance. And the second one was the conservation assistance for water users. Conservation assistance for water users.
It says technical assistance
Technical
for water
assistance,
users.
forgive me,
Okay.
yes.
Those are two hard needs.
Yes.
Okay.
Technical one, where is it?
It's right after MOU. Okay.
And then as we were saying with identifying hard needs, the assessment and evaluation lines, those are also obligations and contracts that we have with the Corps of Engineers and the U.S. Geological Survey and others that we have those contracts in place, but the federal invoicing schedule doesn't really meet the state schedules, so we still need to pay for those. So those roll over if we haven't been invoiced as early as we'd like to be. And there are three more reappropriations we'd like to request restoration of. One is reservoir and water quality research, and that is for additional expenses that we anticipate and plan to have to acquire water quality data and monitoring in the current fiscal year. Also, education and outreach. Anytime we go anywhere and have public meetings, we're always being asked to provide more education. People need to know more about their water. Where does it come from? What are these issues? So we've made a real effort of ramping that up. As you might remember from yesterday, one of the 5 guiding principles of the Kansas Water Plan is increasing awareness, that education component. So we have hired a new outreach and education coordinator. So getting that person up to speed and then having a lot of things sort of in the hopper for them to do and for that unit to move forward, those are additional expenditures that we expect to have. And then finally, we request that the reappropriation be restored for the HB 2302 grant administration. And as Luke was mentioning, we have from the HB 2302 funds, we have the actual grant monies, but we need monies, and they're included in the bill, they were envisioned in the bill to begin with, to pay for the administration of those grants so that we can take applications, we can evaluate them, we can track, we can monitor, we can make sure that those grants are being spent right. Those were the 6 reappropriations that we're requesting restoration of. And as I mentioned, in the spirit of everybody having to tighten their belt a little bit, we've identified a few things in the State Water Plan Fund line items that we could live with if the reappropriations lapse. And I'll walk through, there are 4 of those, and I have dollar amounts. So if you would like me to go kind of slowly so you can write them down, I'm happy to do that. One is the Equus Beds chloride plume. That effort from the water office standpoint previously was a lot of study, and that has been done. This is now moving into an implementation phase with KDHE. So the $66,786 can lapse from that, from the water office component of the State Water Plan Fund. Next, number 2, the Kansas Reservoir Protection Initiative. We can live with a lapse of some of that, most of that, because that total reappropriation would have been $89,888, but we're willing to be comfortable with 64,888 lapsing. We need to retain 25,000 for program operations for that within the water office. So we'd request keeping 25,000 of that, but the rest, we could live with that lapsing. So those are two more. The High Plains Aquifer Partnerships, also, we could live with a partial lapse of that, of $712,000. And where that comes from is that was tied to the federal RCPP grant that the federal government approved and then withheld. So the state going for that grant will now not go forward, so that state match for that can lapse. But we do want to continue the rest of the High Plains Aquifer Partnership. So 712,000 from that could lapse. One more. The water quality partnerships, again, we could live with a partial lapse of that. And that number is $291,326. And that's primarily used for the Milford Lake RCPP match. And additional funding within that line helps leverage other monies, and we need to keep that in the works, in the mix. So those were 4 elements that, taken together, would amount to $1,135,000. And that amount could help us really take enough of the next step for one of our enhancements. So for the water planning and project development, one of those 2 enhancements, that amount of savings, if you will, could help us move forward with the enhancement for water planning and project development. The request for that was higher, but the 1.135 million will help us to take a meaningful step forward with that. So I appreciate
I'm
you
sorry,
listening
I'm
to me.
just
I'm
making
letting y'all
notes.
take notes. I know there's a lot to take notes about.
Okay,
And
so-
I'm happy to answer questions, or as I said, if, with your permission, Madam Chair, Victoria is prepared to come up and present as well.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Questions from the committee? Representative Rogers.
Thank you. Let me quick, okay, this is fine. Are you looking at reappropriation for 26, or we're talking about moving this into 27 budget? Okay, then I feel a little better, because approps is like put the squeal on any, if you need that much to finish out the year. I thought it was moving on, so that's no good. Thank you.
Yes, of these 4 things. Yes. Okay, any other questions about the 27? So I'm just going to repeat this back, and you tell me if I'm in the ballpark. So your ask, that big ask is for water planning and project development, and you're willing to make cuts to cover about half of that? Okay. Any other questions?
And the reappropriation restoration for the
Right.
6 reappropriation lines.
And what do those total? Do you have a total for them? Luke can figure it. He can figure that quickly, so. Okay. Any other questions about the water? Representative Rogers.
Madam Chair, okay, now since I got a little bit more understanding, so we went through, so what we went through the Kansas Water Office here. And so what you explained was kind of the new, the numbers that are already in here, then what you talked about with the enhancements, what we have here is not the new number that you told us. Now the new number, I guess what I'm saying is, we have these numbers plus what she said of that wasn't appropriated in 26. Are you, because I assume you spent all the money, you always do, right? So basically what you did, again, I'm trying to understand. What you did is the money in the sense that you came up and said, this is what we need for operation. Then you looked at it and said, here's we redefined the priorities based on the dollars, based on what you cut to be a good team player. Is that in a nutshell?
Pretty much, but the word operations bothers me because I'm really speaking just to the State Water Plan Fund, not to water office operations, not to agency operations. So,
Right, just looking at, Madam Chair, looking at,
perhaps at this point, it would be good to transition to Victoria with the chair's permission.
If you think that's where we need to go, let's go there. So all of the items that you did reference were under the Kansas Water Office.
Correct. That's correct.
So that's a part of the Kansas Water Office budget. And we need to make this water thing a whole lot simpler. It goes into so many different. Okay, so.
we have a task force that's trying, Madam Chair.
So there's about 4.6 million in reappropes that are being requested back. And that does not include the water planning and project development because that's an enhancement. Okay, okay. '26 or '27? In '26. Okay. That's where we are. Victoria, clear this up for us. Thank you.
Sure. So if there are, I could only hear part of the conversation because I couldn't hear Luke, so I'm not sure what your discussion was. But to get to Representative Rogers' question, sorry, Victoria Asbury, Kansas Water Office. Thank you for having me. So, sorry, could you repeat your question? We've gone down.
And I understand, and
Perfect.
I don't mean to make this thing confusing. Sometimes I do. Because again, I have some concern with the word reappropriation. I want to make sure I fully understand that, because you know where I am on water, strong advocate. I want to make sure we're doing this thing the right way. So, and I think what I'm looking at here are all projects, have nothing to do with the internal workings of, that's a different deal that's kind of handled. So basically, what I'm looking at is, okay, when Director Owens talked about the enhancements, things we need to do, and then first my confusion was, is that 26? No, we're going to 27 budget now. But of this, what these numbers show, we have reappropriation of, we don't have, reappropriation is maybe not the right term, because I think of reappropriation after it's been done, comes back to the next year and we talk about budgets. So again, I think to understand, we're looking at this dollar amount, whatever it was come up with, and then based on where it started, you have reevaluated to pick priorities into those that maybe can have a reduction in funding to get to the dollars you came up with those top priorities. Is that's what I'm really trying to get at?
Yes. Yeah. So reappropriations, just to be very clear, is money carried forward that was not spent in '25 and rolls over into '26 automatically generally. The Special Committee on State Budget cut all reappropriations because, not to put words in their mouths, they felt like that state agencies should come forward and ask and justify why we didn't spend those dollars at last fiscal year. So but that's what Connie just walked through a little bit of why we didn't spend those 5 or 6 budget lines and why we're asking to keep them. The four that that Connie identified we willing to lapse part or all of is because, yes, we looked at our obligations at the time for those four budget lines, and we're comfortable lapsing them, and we would prefer that they be reused for the enhancement of water planning and project development, because that's more of our priority, and we feel like we can spend that money versus what it was originally appropriated for. So yes, hopefully that addressed your question and or agreed with you.
Representative
I'm
Rogers.
sorry. So again, to understand the number one thing that we've said on the MOU storage, operation, and maintenance. Again, just so we understand, even if we do pay off and buy that water, there's still yearly assessments, right? Regardless, I mean, that it's two different things. One, paying off, in a sense, the loan or the bonds to get us, they can't tell us that we can't have the water, but then every year, and that's based on how much we own, how much our contract, is that correct? Just to make sure we understand that it's two different things, because we had talked about, doing that, but so then we still have those fees every year, correct?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So yes, when we talk about the water supply storage debt that we would like to be paid off, you can consider that principal and interest. Once we've paid that off, we, the state of Kansas, would control that water storage. But what I do want to say is that we would not start paying operation maintenance, O&M, until we actually started using the water. So we can pay off the debt without starting to pay O&M until we start using the water. So after that, yes, there would be yearly, but, so just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
So now I have a question. What about the water that we're using out of those reservoirs now? Are we just paying by the cubic foot, or?
So we have what's called our public water supply program, specifically our water marketing program. And just for a shameless plug, you do have your budget overview in front of you. And at the very back is our public water supply program. So our water marketing customers are charged an annual rate per 1,000 gallons for use of that water. We basically sell them water, right? And we charge them a fee. And so that's where the money for that comes from, and that covers operation and maintenance on that water that's being used. So the customers that we contract with are the ones that are covering that cost.
Any other questions about the Kansas Water Office budget? Seeing none, thank you, ladies. We will close the hearing on the Kansas Water Office and move to Kansas Department of Health and Environment, the Division of Environment. Luke, please give us the rundown.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Luke Drury, Senior Fiscal Analyst, Legislative Research. I will note as well, this is a very complicated, difficult deal with water. All sorts of different lines of appropriations, tables, recommendations. If any member has any questions, I'd be more than happy to come to your office, sit down, walk you through it, talk through these items. This is what I do full-time, and I still find it difficult to track or to fully understand sometimes. So absolutely, please let me know, and I'll come and meet you in your office and we can go through it.
So we'll probably have like a remedial class in my office, and we'll have milk and cookies, and anybody's welcome to come to learn more.
I miss those meetings.
Madam Chair, the Division of Environment summary begins on page 1. Very brief idea here to give you an idea of what Division of Environment does. I do want to note, though, this expenditures by fiscal year FY 2025 actuals. You will see a general fund spike and an all fund spike. That is going to be directly related to small towns infrastructure grants that were offered by the Division of Environment. That included general fund, that included state water plan fund dollars. Madam Chair, members of the committee, if you flip over onto page 2, that's the budget policy snapshot. This is where you will see the reappropriations that occurred from 25 to 26. You will also see the one-time adjustments. On page 2 is the budget policy snapshot. Again, those are going to be very quick, one-line explanations of funding adjustments and a note there for you. Again, just very quick hitter for your information. Flipping over onto page 3, you see a chart of summary of expenditures over a 10-year period. You will see what looks like a hill in the middle of your expenditure table there. I would point out to the committee that those expenditures occurred as a result of federal monies flowing through the Division of Environment as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic in fiscal years 2021 and fiscal years 2022. Flipping to the next page, page 4, some more expenditure data here that shows trends over time. You will note and see again those expenditures increases in FY 2021 and 2022. I would also note that you do see about 47% of agency expenditures relate to contractual services. That is going to be related to agency trust funds. Trust funds are monies received by the state that can be expended for a very specific purpose. I will give some details and explanations of those in the summary. Those contract expenditures also include expenditures as it relates to state water plan fund expenditures and revolving loan funds. Again, I will discuss those in more detail moving forward. I would note that the state aid and other assistance are mostly, again, those trust funds and state water plan funds for this particular agency. Flipping over onto page 5, there is a table here that has much more detail for you for state operations, expenditures by classification. I would point out the fees for professional services here, which you will see make up 41.3% of the overall agency budget in 2026, is mostly related to those fees for professional services for remediation activities and water activities. On the next page, page 6, there are state aid and other assistance charts here for you. In FY 2025 actuals for state aid, that number of $21.6 million may jump off the page to you as it relates to recent expenditures and approved expenditures. I would note again, that's mostly related to small town infrastructure grants expended by the agency. Flipping over to page 7, there are some details here that show expenditures by program. There are expenditures by program, where you will see a majority of the agency expenditures do reside in the remediation division within the Division of Environment. There are also reflected here FTE positions by program. Page 8 of the budget summary will show expenditures by fund. Along with, I do include a fee fund analysis here for the committee. The agency does receive some state general fund, 3.6% of overall agency expenditures. State water plan fund makes up about 10%. And then as you will note, those federal funds and those all other funds are the majority of expenditures for the Division of Environment. Again, many of those all other funds are agency trust funds. The fee fund analysis is here I included this fee fund analysis specifically because the agency's request does include an enhancement for the Water Program Management Fund. So I do include information here that talks about how monies are remitted to this fund, what they are used for, and it does show expenditures and revenues over the last several fiscal years and estimated expenditures and revenues moving forward. This front table is really the front page of the front few pages of the summary really are some for more informational information for you all and to help color some context within the agency budget. Flipping over onto page 9 is the FY 2026 analysis. Item number 1 is that amount that was approved by the legislature. That's $86.6 million, including 3.5 general fund and 6.8 state water plan fund. Item number 2, agency reappropriations from the state general fund, $240 rolled over. Item number 3, state water plan fund reappropriations, $3.5 million rolled over. At the bottom of page 9, beginning on into page 10, I do include those lines of appropriation that did experience a reappropriation, the amount of that reappropriation, and a description of what those monies are used for. Item number 4 is a general fund reappropriation lapse. Members will remember that the legislature last year did approve 1.5% reduction to operating expenditures across the state as it relates to reappropriations. The Division of Environment did experience a lapse of $4 from the state general fund. Item number 5 at the bottom of page 10. That's the Underground Petroleum Storage Tank Release Fund. This is an agency trust fund, as I was discussing earlier. The agency does estimate increased expenditures from this fund. The fund generates revenues from fees assessed on petroleum wholesale distributors, and monies are used to reimburse owners and operators for cleanup of contamination caused by tanks. So this is an item where those fees and revenues that do come into the fund can be used for only very specific purposes, and this is the very specific purpose for which it can be used, which is the cleanup of contamination. The agency does estimate that larger, more expensive projects are estimated to be completed in FY 2026. The Volkswagen Mitigation Fund is at the bottom of page 10. That's an increase of $3 million. If you flip over onto page 11, you will see a bit more information. That Volkswagen Fund was created as a result of legal action that took place against Volkswagen. That settlement was reached in 2016. KDHE acts on behalf of the state and that trust to implement mobile source improvement projects that reduce nitrogen oxide emissions. I do include a link to the Kansas plan here. The agency is estimating increasing expenditures from that fund because the deadline to expend those funds is quickly approaching. So the agency does estimate to get those monies out the door before that deadline reaches us. Item number 7 is the Kansas Water Pollution Control Revolving Fund. I do include here the purposes for which loans can be made from this fund in KSA 65-3322. This is revolving loan fund, meaning that loans are given out to recipients. Recipients pay those loan backs, including an interest rate. That interest rate helps to cover the program's operating expenditures. Those monies that are received back into the fund in the form of principal payments are then put back into the pot of monies that can go back out for other loan recipients. Again, revolving loan fund. I do include what those can be used for. The agency has noted that over the last several fiscal years, this program has seen tremendous growth in its usage, so they do estimate to see increased expenditures from the fund. Item number 8, Abandoned Mine Reclamation Fund. That's a decrease of $1.6 million. Again, this is a sort of agency trust fund. Those monies are received by the U.S. Department of Interior. They're used to mitigate hazardous conditions created by past coal mining activities. Coal mining within the state has ended. As a result of that, available monies coming in are decreasing and less land is undergoing remedial activities. Eventually, we should estimate to see expenditures from this fund to completely go away. Item number 9, Performance Partnership Grant Fund. That's a decrease of $2 million. This is a fund that receives monies from the federal EPA for water-related activities. The agency estimates decreased expenditures from that fund. Flipping over onto page 12 is item number 10, all other adjustments. That's a net increase of about $66,000 from other agency trust funds. The agency also includes an increase of 0.18 FTE position. Madam Chair, I can certainly stand for questions, or I can move forward into FY 2027.
Thank you, Luke. Questions from the committee? What's the 0.18 FTE for?
Madam Chair, I would defer to the agency to describe that 0.18. It is normal, though, to see agencies in their budgets to adjust FTE counts across different program areas, division areas, as needs change, as folks move from this division to that division, as federal funding is available and not available. So we do typically see that from year to year, but in regard to the specifics for this year, I would defer to the agency.
Okay, we'll get you up there shortly. Any other questions for Luke? Let's do 27 quick, and then we'll have the agency
Absolutely,
speak to
Madam
us.
Chair. Thank you. Page 13 is FY 2027 analysis. Item number 1 are those one-time adjustments at the bottom of page 13. And members will remember, last session, $425,000 was appropriated to update the KEAMS database. Those were estimated to be one-time expenditures that do not reoccur in FY 2027. Therefore, they are deleted. Flipping over onto page 14, you will see items that were identified as being one-time for contamination remediation, totaling $1 million, and the Local Environment Protection Program, LEP, totaling $150,000. Again, considered to be one-time expenditures that are deleted for FY 2027. Item number 2 is the beginning of the enhancement request for the agency. This is where you will see the Water Program Management Fund. This relates to the fee fund analysis that I discussed earlier, I believe on page 8. The agency is requesting $500,000 from the general fund for an enhancement. Federal funding for this particular program has been flat for several years. For the last 10 years, operational costs have increased. The agency states that as wastewater is generated from different processes, they may need to be discharged into Kansas rivers. For that discharge to occur, a permit is issued. And the agency indicates that the process is underway for increased fees for these permits. However, it does take some time. As members of the committee will know, these must go through the Joint Administrative Rules and Regulations Committee and the whole process with the Secretary of State, Attorney General, etc. So the agency essentially requests this as kind of a stopgap measure. Item number 3, operator exam updates. That's a $300,000 ask from the general fund to update the exam validation process for drinking water operator certifications. The agency indicates that those exam questions were developed in the early 2000s and they need updated. The agency also indicates that they do not have the staff or capacity to do this themselves. They would request, to use a contractor to have this done. Item number 4, EQUIS beds. That's the bottom of page 14. That's $9.9 million. Flipping over onto page 15. And I do apologize, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I am not a geologist or a scientist, but I will do my best to explain this ask. There is a chloride plume that is near Burton, Kansas, and that's the result of a oil-filled brine plume. That the agency indicates that plume was created in the 1930s to 1940s because of nearby oil fields. The agency requests that this plume be addressed by using some remediation efforts, and that would include piping some of that water from the chloride plume to the city of Wichita, where it would be combined with the public water supply. With that being said, those chloride concentrations would increase in the city of Wichita. However, the increase would not be above that threshold that would be considered hazardous. It would still be considered safe. By doing such, much of that groundwater should become usable. As it currently stands, much of it is not usable by either a water supply or for local agriculture. Item number 5 is contamination remediation. There's an increased state water plant fund request here of $1.9 million. The legislature did approve some increased funding for contamination remediation last year. As I noted, that was considered to be one time. As a result of those additional dollars that were appropriated, the agency was able to address more known orphan sites by the agency. By making this enhancement request, the agency does indicate that larger projects, along with the number of projects, will be able to be completed. Item number 6 is District Office Technical Assistance. There is a request of $500,000 from the State Water Plant Fund and for FTEs. Specifically, this request would be new, creating a new line of appropriation that would help with on-site technical assistance for drinking water utilities. The enhancement would add 4 environmental specialists. Those specialists would help locals in exploring treatment options, addressing compliance issues, emergency response coordination, and evaluating and planning for regionalization alternatives. Item number 7, LEPP, Local Environment Protection Program, $350,000 from the State Water Plant Fund. And this would help to address private water, well, and septic systems. Flipping over onto page 16. Item number 8, State Water Plant Fund, non-point source. There is an increase here of $91,000 from the State Water Plant Fund enhancement for the non-point source program. The agency indicates that this funding would help to develop application programming interface that would allow more rapid movement of data documenting pollution reduction metrics. Currently, staff uses a lot of time manually inputting data. This request would help to automate that process. Madam Chair, members of the committee, I would also note that for this budget and the Water Office, and I apologize for not mentioning this before, all of these enhancements requests that you see as it relates to the State Water Plant Fund were recommended by the Kansas Water Authority. I would just note that for the chair and members of the committee. On page 16, item number 9, this health insurance rate change. Again, we've seen this before. $28,000 for employer contributions to group health insurance. The agency's budget reflects that. Item number 10, CAPERS rate change, a reduction of $898, for CAPERS rate change. On page 17, this is where we are seeing some of those same items in FY 2026 and 2027. The Underground Petroleum Tank Release Trust Fund, an increase of $3.1 million here. Volkswagen Mitigation Trust Fund, an increase of $3 million there. That's item 12. Item 13, Kansas Water Pollution Control Revolving Loan Fund. Again, the agency estimates increased usage for this fund. That's an increase of $2.2 million. And then, Madam Chair, members of the committee, the final page, page 18. There's one new fund that is showing here, and that is item 14 at the top of the page, the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Fund. A decrease of $586,000. That is because the federal grant is ending. Once expenditures are done and gone, no funding will no longer be available for this particular use. Item 15, Abandoned Mine Reclamation Fund. Again, as coal mining has ended in Kansas, we are estimating to see decreases in expenditures from this fund. Item 16, the Performance Partnership Grant Fund, reduced estimates and expenditures as it relates to this particular grant program from the federal EPA for drinking water, groundwater, and wastewater. All other adjustments made by the agency is a decrease of $341,000, again, across multiple agency federal funds and fee funds. The Department of Environment is an agency that has dozens and dozens of fee, federal, and trust funds. Finally, you do see an increase of 0.58 FTE across several different program areas. Madam Chair, that concludes my presentation here. I do know that Deputy Secretary Gleason is here with us today, and she may be able to address the committee and answer some of those more technical questions about the agency's budget.
Thank you, Luke. Questions for Luke from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Kate?
Good afternoon, Chair Mosier
Welcome.
and members of the committee. Is this on?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I'm Kate Gleason. I'm Deputy Secretary of Environment for the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. Well, I did this presentation last year for you all, but Leo is now officially retired, so here I am to take over. I did have a PowerPoint prepared, but I think in the interest of time, it would be good if you guys all want to look through this. It says a lot of the great things we've done this year. Of course, we're doing great work. I trust you trust me on that. So we can set that aside for now, and I'll just go through our reappropriations and enhancements in the interest of time. Now, I'm not sure if you all received this written testimony from me in your packets. You did, great, perfect. Then we can fly through this. The reappropriations we have are all water plan fund reappropriations. And I can go through and explain some of those and what we have encumbered and spent already so that that can inform your decision making. The top line is the $800,000 for contamination remediation. That money has all been encumbered. The reason that hasn't been spent yet is because it takes time to put out bids for that work and get the project staged as efficiently as possible so that we're spending money. We did, as Luke noted, make progress on our orphan site list from 144 sites to 139. So we believe this money is being well spent and put to good use for the state of Kansas. And I think we are exceeding, I think we estimated that each site would take $500,000 to $1 million to clean up and close, but we are making ground on that and getting them closed for less. So we're happy about that. The second item of about $15,000 for the local environmental protection program, that has all already been encumbered. That money is a pass-through from us to local, either counties or groups of counties and their sanitarians, and they grant it out to low-income Kansans for repair or replacement of septic systems. And please feel free to interrupt me with questions. I know I'm going through this, but I see the clock behind you, so. The next line is $559,000 on one line item and $847,000 on another. Both of those are for RAPS, which is our watershed health program. Because of some changes that were made to our contracting process, those are not encumbered yet, or they're being signed right now. They're like in our our document signing system, DocuSign, if you're familiar with it, to get it through to be encumbered. And of course, that money is our state share of the federal RAPS grant. So this money is really important to keep because we get $2.9 million from the federal government in exchange for this amount that we pay in. The next line is $100,000 for stream trash removal. That money was put in to address trash in the Kansas River. So we approached Topeka and Lawrence about spending that money in different ways. Neither of those projects worked out for various reasons. So we are now in progress of subgranting this to Friends of the Caw for them to do a stream trash removal. We think that's actually maybe turn out to be the best way to spend that money because they get so much more bang for their buck with the use of volunteers that we're really, hopeful that that works out. The next line, the 176, wow, numbers are losing their meaning to me. For TMDL initiatives, 154,000 of that is already encumbered and the rest would be spent if reappropriated. The sampling for that is seasonal, of course, and we do a lot of our work when the streams are flowing, so the past few months have been fairly quiet for the agency, but that money is used for surface water quality monitoring. The $876,000 for the drinking water protection program, we have spent $231,000 of that. We have worked, that program helps protect areas right around, assess public water supplies and protect the land right around their groundwater wells. Typically, it's usually for cities that have nitrate issues. We've had we've done our best to outreach to those communities and get them involved to use that money, and this is the progress we've made to date, and of course, we would continue those efforts if reappropriated. The $74,000 for the Aquifer Recharge Basin Pilot Project, we passed that through to the Kansas Geological Survey. They have already done sampling and gotten access agreements with 2 property owners. The sampling results for that well, that was important to test the water quality before we pipe it into the aquifer. Obviously, we don't want to put a lot of nasty runoff down those wells straight to the aquifer. So we did that phase of it, and the next phase, if we have funding, will be to actually go out and do the actual pilot project and put in those. They're going to be artificial playas that have a well, and they would collect rainwater and recharge the aquifer is the idea. On the next page, we have the $19,000 for the harmful algal bloom. $17,000 of that is encumbered with this sort of. We've done some pilot projects with the bulk of that money, and with this small amount that's left over, we have encumbered it to work with smaller like subdivisions or things that have smaller ponds that are having algae problems. So that's what that money is encumbered for. So I guess I'll pause here for a second and see if there are questions about the reappropriations.
Thank you, Kate. Questions about the reappropriations?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would you go over again the $100,000 for stream trash removal and how that worked or didn't work? I think that was to clean up, some of that was to clean up the river.
Yeah, our initial attempt was to go to Lawrence and Topeka and ask them to put, I think the idea was to pilot like a netting over their outfalls so the trash that's coming through the storm system would be caught before it went into the river. And I wasn't involved in the discussions with those cities, but for whatever reason, they weren't that interested in doing that. I don't know if it wasn't enough money for them to do it. I think that might have been it, but I could get you more information on that.
Okay, I was thinking part of that is from the encampments of homeless people.
Correct.
Okay, I know what we're talking about. That's good. Thank you.
Any other questions? So that harmful algae bloom, there's like $3,000 left.
Correct.
Right? And you want that additional money to, I can't remember what you said, to do what?
Well, the money that has been encumbered, the $17,000, was to reach out to folks with smaller bodies of water and help them put in practices and things that would prevent algal blooms in those smaller areas. And then the $3,000 that's left, of course, we would spend on that also, but it hasn't been encumbered yet.
Okay. Any other questions? And you said about the remediation, they have estimated $500,000 to plug one orphan well?
It's not, those are not orphan wells, those are contaminated
Orphan
sites.
sites, oh, so it's not just a hole
Yeah.
in the ground, it's a large area, could be a large area.
Yeah, so often it requires like a soil removal of contaminated soil or some other treatment of the groundwater that's contaminated. So they can be pretty expensive.
So how many, like, square miles roughly? Or,
We have 139 sites, and some are small and some are very, very large. It's kind of hard to,
so it's going to average out the cost of doing small ones and large ones? And
yes,
then
exactly.
Okay. Representative Rogers.
And this is, you were here for the first one. This is the same kind of thing, or is this 26 appropriated dollars going into 27? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Just want to make sure. I have a question
Sorry,
which,
not correct, sorry, not correct. 25 going to 26. That's why we have her.
It's rolled forward into 26, the current year.
so you're wanting $3 million to stay in 26? It'll all be spent by the end of the fiscal year? These are ongoing, if I'm reading correct, these are ongoing projects, correct? Okay.
Hear about them next session.
What's that?
You won't hear about them next session.
I won't, for sure. I know I won't.
Okay.
But, okay, and I have a question once you get to the next one. So, again, this is just a reappropriation of the balance 25 into 26. Okay.
Basically, the special committee took these all out. Okay. Any other questions or comments about 26? Okay, if you have some more that you'd like to share, please proceed.
Yeah, the enhancements start at the top of the back page of this with the certified operator test rewrite. And I will note for you all that the enhancements on this page differ from the ones that Luke presented. The asks, we understand, everyone's sort of tightening the belt, as you said, and so these ones are reduced from that list. So the certified operator test rewrite is 300,000 to get a specialized. It's a highly specialized exam that we offer to folks, right? The certified operators operate public water supplies. There's about 5 different categories of them. It depends on whether or not you're a surface water system or a groundwater system and how big your city is, things like that. Our exam is far out of date, even though it was rewritten in the early 2000s. Cybersecurity risk has changed. A lot of technology has changed. The community of certified operators is not particularly happy with our exam, so we're hoping to rewrite it. And so this money would go to that. Then the state water plan enhancements that we have listed here are the Equus beds, Burton chloride plume cleanup, that's about 2.5 million. There's a lot of information there about the Burton chloride plume. Essentially, this is a 25 to 30 square mile contaminated site. It's contaminated because of very old and historic oil and gas operations. We've been tossing around what to do with this for a long time, and the prevailing strategy is to pipe the water to Wichita's system, which is very nearby because of their aquifer storage and recharge facility, and mix it with their existing water supply at low levels. No one should be able to taste or know that there's some extra chloride in their water. Some chloride, of course, is to be expected in water. And Wichita's on board with that. We've been talking to Wichita and GMD2 to get this project moved forward. This would be the next step. And of course, it's the total project price is 19 million, but we would have to stage it out depending on how much funding we get. The next is 175,000 for local environmental protection program. Again, that is the program that helps folks repair septic systems. So this money would allow us to, we did get 150 last year, we spent it all, so I think we could easily spend 175 to do even more work on this program. And then the last is the non-point source program, 45,000. And that is for us to put some software in place that allows our sponsoring organizations and our staff to input data electronically, and it would make it easier for them to identify places where further practices could be in place to improve watersheds. Was that fast enough?
Thank you, Kate. Questions from the committee? Representative Rogers.
Thank you. Okay. Certified operator test rewrite. Okay, so I understand there's at least 1 or 2 bills working their way through the legislature. I'm not sure exactly this or something similar to this, and of course, all the water meetings, this gets brought up about trying to do something, which is fine. I guess my ask is there money within another place to get that rather than ask for SGF money for this?
Not that I'm aware of. Our water programs are already, not to spend a lot of time on this, but extremely strapped for cash because of congressional earmarks that are depleting what we would receive as a water program. So our water program certainly couldn't pay for it. If we were going to dip into another program, we wouldn't normally say, let's take our air money and spend it on certified operator, but.
Madam Chair, so is this a one-time Well, for the length of the test is valid. So this would be a one-time, and what is the cost to take that test? I mean, would you be close, or is it, how big of a loss leader is it?
Currently, we are capped in statute at $25 per exam taker. So we don't make a lot of money on that fee, which has been proposed to be increased and was opposed in past years.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? That was one that I had, so that takes care of that. How far would this water from the Equus beds have to be piped to get to Wichita? How far are we talking?
The aquifer storage and recharge facility is only a few miles from the plume. That's part of the reason why we would like to do this, is so that it can be controlled to Wichita before it enters their water well field and disrupts what they're doing. So that's another component of it.
And we had talked about, Groundwater Management District 2, putting in some funds for this. Are you talking about that, or where are you at on that?
That was raised yesterday in the Senate, on the Senate side, and that's something we're going to look into going forward.
So there's potentially some financial support from them.
I don't think that I am in a position to say yes or no to that.
Well,
at this
you're
time.
having conversations.
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
will ask them.
Okay. So I'm looking at the 2027 analysis from Luke and looking at the amounts that are on your sheet here. The operator exam still sits at 300,000. The Equus beds has been downsized significantly to basically 2.5 million. LEP is halved, even though that's been a successful program, and especially for low-income folks. Is that about, that, I think you said that's about what the program
that's
extended
correct.
last year, and so that's what you're basing that on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the non-point is also halved.
Correct. And others have been deleted entirely, the number 2
Okay,
and 5 and 6 in the agency request.
so the contamination remediation, though, the funds that for 26 are all encumbered. So the 1.8 million you're not going to request in
Not an
27.
additional enhancement. We do receive about $2 million through the state water plan for that, so we'll continue to receive that money and do that work. We just won't get. Last year, we also received an additional $1 million. That's part of the reason why we still have some reappropriate. So we won't ask for any additional money at this time.
Okay.
Contamination
Yeah, if I
remediation.
look up at the top of that column, it's a different funding source, so, okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here, Kate, and we will definitely be looking through the green book. Is there anything else to come before the committee today? On Monday, we will be working these two budgets, so while it's sub-zero and you're home and by your fireplace, pull these out and study them so we can make some good choices for these agencies. So with that, we are adjourned.